What's up, guys? Welcome to KP Community. We are now dropping episode 1, our pilot last week. One of us forgot to record. So appreciate you guys joining us. We're going to have some other guys kind of hopping on, it looks like, as we go through tonight. But as we explained last week, KP Community is going to be broken up into segments. So really excited. Number one, appreciate you guys joining. KP Community is going to be all of our in-house athletes, all of our remote athletes. We've even got some of our partnered schools, some of the coaches, some of the players in partnered schools. They're going to be jumping on as well. So you guys never know who's going to be in the chat or in KP Community. You might have some of our big league guys. Had a couple of great questions last week from some of our guys overseas and some of our big league guys. And then also on top of that, you might have some collegiate coaches, Division I level, JUCO level. You never know. So pretty cool. Appreciate everybody coming out together. Our goal is to, like I said, bring everybody together from all of our aspects of training and chop it up a little bit, talk in depth about what it is that we do at KP, why we do it, and give you guys some insights. Also answering your questions, obviously, as always. So tonight we're breaking it up into 3 segments. We got our Garrett proclaimed and tagged segment called Average. Garrett has dubbed that the worst thing that you can be in life, and I agree with him, the worst thing you can be in life is average. So what we're doing is we're taking social media posts. We're looking at some social media posts, one that Garrett's found and one that I found, trying to determine, is that post average or maybe above average, and kind of chop it up and explain why. So that's going to be the first segment tonight. Second segment is going to be live from the Coop. As we dropped last week, the Coop went live. So the Coop is your one-stop shop for everything KP content. So also some updates and news within Coop, explaining some things like our news scheduler and some of the updates that we have coming soon, like KP Youth. So I know Matt Fowler's on the call tonight, our youth director. So appreciate you joining, Matt. But lastly, we'll finish up tonight with some AMA, some Ask Me Anything. Obviously, you guys have questions. We want to provide answers. So as always, if you guys miss this, it's going to be stored within Coop. So any member can get on the Coop anytime. Check out the prior episodes of KP Community, and we'll be, like I said, storing that on there. So let's get it started up tonight. I got some good content tonight, I think, for a social media post. Garrett, I'll let you start it while I get mine up. What social media post did you see this week, and was it average or above average?
So this week's is not really a one singular post, but it's going to be one guy's whole account. So basically, this guy's whole account is just average. Biggest thing about his account is the way he goes about training. So he trains everything at 90 degrees, everything at this so-called or proclaimed optimal for performance. That's average because when we look at the body, yes, 90 degrees is probably going to be the most optimal to produce force because the muscle is their mid-range, is in the mid-range of where that muscle is going to be at. The bad part about that is if you're always training that mid-range, you're really strong there, but usually injuries don't occur at the mid-range because you're so strong. So being able to train the shortened range of a muscle and the lengthened range of the muscle to be able to withstand the forces that you're going to have on your body because of the sport you're going to play is going to be the big thing from a training standpoint. That's where training the full range of motion or the in ranges are going to be where it's going to be.
So taking you out of crazy scientist mode for a second, end range being like, we'll use like the arm, for example, right? So like in range being like, if I go all the way back to max external rotation, that's in range, correct? Yeah. So this guy's theory is we only want to train in these kind of middle ranges. So as you explain, I think this maybe is something to reiterate on, like talk about the injury component of that again, because that's obviously, if we're not ever training the end range, like if we actually perform at the end range, that seems like kind of dangerous, right?
Yeah. So an injury is applied force that exceeds the tissue tolerance.
Yep.
And the tissue tolerance of the muscle, it's weakest at its end range, either shortened or lengthened. Majority of the time, lengthened range.
Yep.
and being able to train those and build that strength in that in ranges are going to build the applied force aspect of it. So then the force that you do apply on the body won't exceed that, and then ultimately an injury would occur.
Gotcha. So, thinking on my side of it here, so I 100% agree. Like, I think, I laugh. You showed me that account. I thought it was hilarious. I mean, it doesn't make sense logically, and I think talking to any halfway educated like PT, ortho coach, strength coach, like it just doesn't make logical sense. I don't see that happening a lot. So the idea that one individual put all their eggs into one basket is that being their thing, I don't really get it either. So definitely labeling that one as average, very average, like low, like very low average. Okay, got it. Cool. Let me read you mine from the week. This is the one that I pulled off, and of course, my favorite topic of throwing workload. It says, FYI, pitchers, pro pitchers. This is for pro pitchers, but we'll apply it for everybody. FYI, pro pitchers, end of season deload. As your season comes to an end, be sure that you don't stop throwing after your last game. Just as you ramped up in January, February, there should be a ramp down so you don't shock your arm. And then I won't read the rest of it. So I don't really I've met this person actually in person and had a good conversation with them, so I'm not bashing them too hard. I think they're above average person. I think they're a great person, but a little confused on the post. So when we talk about throwing deload, I know where to start with this one. Start talking about throwing deload coming out of season. Basically what he's saying is that you should build up your overall workload, or in some realms we'd call it volume, build up your volume over time. And then once season ends, he says not to shock your system. You basically build it down like in reverse. So you go from like really high workloads, like throwing 20 pitch bullpens, to then maybe I guess like a 10 pitch bullpen, and then like a no pitch bullpen, and then max long toss to 225 feet, and then you build it down. I don't really understand why. It doesn't make it. There's no research to back that you quote unquote shock the system. That doesn't make any sense. What we typically recommend for guys coming out of season, this is really important. I think he's actually bringing up a great point that there shouldn't be just this complete stop period, where you just like, season ends, boom, like I go home and I just take vacation. There should be, in my opinion, we should maintain our schedule one more week out and do like an exit pin from a season. And so I think that exit pin can be super valuable, where if we start to look at from a biomechanics standpoint, you are going to be at your seasonal best, like in that exit pin range, right? So like if you do that exit pin, you come in, you throw that one bullpen, you maybe throw 15 pitches or whatever, high output, just focusing on just your best fastball basically. That can help us really get a good picture of where you're at in season, and then help us obviously also reestablish that off-season planning. So we do deload, but deload doesn't have to be this slow, gradual back down from a peak load, which is insane. So the way that I would recommend doing this, obviously, is you come out of season, you do that exit pin over 1 week, maybe take some inventory on where you're at for that 1 week. And then after that, you would immediately go to like shut down. It's all dependent. That amount of time that you take off is all dependent upon how much time you have to build up. One of the most common mistakes with guys in the summertime, high school guys especially, they shut down before fall. Pro guys take too much time off. They try to start throwing in like December 1 range, try to build up for a season. You don't have enough time. So I always recommend 2 weeks down, and then you start to actively go into like this active rest period where you're starting to throw these first 2 weeks back on. They're very light weeks. And you start to build your way back up. Getting back to season takes 3 to 4 months usually. We want to apply phases into that off season as well. So kind of crazy, this deload concept. Some guys want to do velocity phases. Not saying that a velocity phase is always best right after a season, but depending upon how much work you got done in season, how much you were used, that velocity phase might actually be a good time to put at the end of a season as well. There's so many different things to look at, so many different ways to program this. But average or not average, this post specifically, very average. Very average. still average. The person that wrote the post, above average, innovated baseball to a degree, so way above average. Post is still very average though, so whatever. All right, moving on to our next segment. Tonight we're going to move into our live from the Coop. Live from the Coop is there we go. Live from the Coop is going to be a discussion tonight, a discussion point tonight from a post that I put up on Coop this past week. Excited about it. Talking about one of our philosophies, one of our most known philosophies, called T3. You used to do like a hand thing, like a T3. Yeah, we're gonna. It never really caught on.
Yeah, that's something. I'll figure it out.
I think that's all right. I think we'll pass. So it's all right. No big deal. Good. So T3 is our threat. I can't believe it. It's like a dodgeball thing. Anyways. All right. So anyways, T3 is our arm health philosophy. When we look at performance and we look at arm health, there's really two big things that we can look at. We're talking about fastball velocity. If we're talking about arm health, fastball velocity is predicated upon the same three things that really arm health is. So when we talk about it, it's workload management, it's strength, and then it's mechanics. And so the way that I look at it and explain it from a health standpoint, workload, if we look at like a triangle, right? Triangle. There we go. Top of the triangle is workload. Next most important thing is strength. So that's number 2 spot. And the third most important thing is our mechanics. So a lot of times guys get that completely wrong, right? And we talk about this a little bit in the post, that, mechanics get looked at as this like holy grail of like arm health. Like if you want to stay healthy, you have to have perfect mechanics and your tissue has to do X and Okay, fine. Workload management looks at basically global stress put on the elbow for now. But it also tracks the global stress of the arm. Basically, we're seeing how much that arm is used. So that stress is being calculated based upon the intensity of the throw, which the sleeve does a very good job of. And when we look at this, it's not one single throw. So if you read like ASMI studies and you read like all these other research studies, it's never one single throw that causes the injury. It's the use of high stress over time. So if you have high stress from bad mechanics one time, probably not the reason for your injury. If you have a lot of use of that that bad mechanic with high stress over time, and when it's not managed, then that's probably where your injury starts to occur. Strength is the ability to overcome that, right? Yeah, so
I think it goes back to what we talked about earlier about training in ranges.
Yep, exactly.
Or the injury equation: applied force greater than tissue tolerance.
Yep.
Workload, fatigue management.
Yep. That's
going to reduce your ability to the force that is able to buffer. Strength is the ability to increase that force that we can withstand. And then the mechanics would be the applied force.
Yep.
And if we can manage our workload correctly, increase the ability to manage or not manage, be able to absorb that force. That mechanics, if we have these two in check, the mechanics are really, it is what it is because we're trying to perform at our highest level.
We're looking at efficiency of transitioning energy at that point and how we're actually producing force. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's again that tissue tolerance. Like how well can we? And I always joke about this. Like I'm way out of shape compared to where I was when I was playing. So if I rolled my ankle today, a lot of Chick-fil-A milkshakes from where I was, back when I was playing. Right, I rolled my ankle today. Chances are I'm not going to pop out of it quite as well as what I used to. So if we start to look at it that way, it's there's a component to strength that is injury prevention or at least injury mitigation. And I wouldn't say prevention. I'd say it's being able to sustain more force or more stress more consistently.
So you need to train more.
Exactly right.
Throw, in our case, throw longer.
Yeah.
To get better at the skill.
Exactly right. So when we look at T3 again, it's these three things, right? It's workload, strength, and mechanics. When we go to velocity, we talk about producing ball velocity. We flip this, and now mechanics become number one. I'd argue strength could be represented as number one, but mechanics, if you have a crazy high amount of strength or just force production, it helps, right? But if you still can't put together the mechanics behind it, it doesn't matter. So I look at strength as mechanics is number one, strength is number two, and then workload management is number three. And people go, well, why is workload still in there? I don't understand. Well, workload is readiness. Like workload is your ability to actually go recover through this process, get back up and be at your best. You wouldn't just go run a marathon today and then run a marathon again tomorrow. Like that doesn't make any sense. Yes.
The most optimal you can be for your performance.
Exactly right.
Recovery goes into that, training goes into that.
I love before your competition the other day, you went you were miserable for like a week because you went like no caffeine, like put yourself in this like crazy space.
Bar cut, basically dipping down, trying to make weight. That's what I had to make.
Yep.
Barely made it, by the way.
Made it.
But then for that day, it was all about performance. It was all about like performance and trying to be optimal. But it also took me a week to get up to that and a caffeine deload and being able to get off of that. So then when I did take it, it would boost me up and I was able to do some things on the platform that I was happy with.
Yeah, and so when it comes back to it, you have your main things here, right? We want to just make sure that we're optimizing all these pieces, our strength, our mechanics, our workload. That's what T3 is. So you guys can hop on Coop. Like I said, we posted this past week. You guys can hop on Coop. Basically, it's like a blog post. Just talks about T3. It is under the throwing and then philosophy tab. Feel free to comment in there. Drop us some questions if you guys have it about what we are talking about in terms of T3 and its approach and how it can be used. We really talk about it in this post more about the arm health side of it, but there's also obviously some relevance and carryover once we start talking about rearranging it for the velocity side of it as well. So with that being said, that's live from the Coop. Other updates this week on Coop. We talk about scheduling. We have now ProPlay AI video. So if some of you guys are still trying to figure out how to take that first ProPlay AI video or use your pulse sensor on in the throwing module. In there, you will see some frequently asked questions. That tab will have those subcategories in it. Garrett's working, becoming an iMovie expert. We had a little coffee shop visit today, and we started talking about editing on iMovie. So Garrett's getting there, but we should have some content up on the lifting tab here shortly and the nutrition tab, getting all that out for you guys, and hopefully digestible, fun to read content on the mad scientist over here from his brain, which is good. So sweet. All right, moving on. We're going to open it up for questions to close tonight. We have our Ask Me Anything. We got a couple of guys that have submitted some stuff online, and we are going to open up the chat box here for you guys as well. Let's go chat box. Boom. I'm going to pop over and we're going to move ourselves into the Ask Me Anything tab. So open it up, guys. Go ahead and submit your comments or your questions into the chat box on Zoom. We will go ahead. I'll start it off. I will read off one of our posts here. We had, of course, Alden Sagi jumped into Coop this week and dropped us a question on the pivot pick. So we'll start off there tonight. As you guys saw, there is a pivot pick video for our drill work up on Coop, giving you guys some detail in terms of the cueing and application of the pivot pick. Alden's question was, is the pivot pick more of a way to train a good arm path, or is it a way to practice glove side disconnect? Are there other variations of this drill I can do to help with other needs such as separation, etc.? Good question. Obviously one that I will answer here for you. So when we look at the pivot pick, one of the important things to understand is that with any constraint drill, not just the pivot pick, our idea here is that we want to look in at how the drill is focus, the position we're trying to start ourselves in. Just because we have a certain way to do the pivot pick online doesn't mean that that's the most optimal way to, quote unquote, feel the movement that we're trying to create. It's about creating awareness through a constraint. So when we look at this, we have to say, is it more to work on good arm path? Is it more to work on good glove side? The pivot pick isolates the upper body. So I would say it's great for either. But as an athlete, you want to focus on one or the other, not try to do all at the same time. So if you're working on like glove side disconnect, this idea of getting your glove to pull away from your trunk as your trunk counters, maybe that's the focus. We've taught guys in the past to do like, 3 pumps, like 1, 2, 3, and then go and unravel the trunk. Other times we've taught guys to just work solely on arm path, basically getting the trunk to face the wall, just going through movement of the arm path. So you could do that as well. There really isn't a right or wrong between those two because that's what the pivot pick is for. It's for the upper body. So any upper body movement, I say pivot pick is awesome. In terms of separation, I understand separation through the pivot pick, but it's really not designed to be a quote unquote separation drill, so to speak. It's a separation drill in terms of the sequence that happens with the upper body movements. But when we're talking about timing of separation, I just think there's other more applicable constraint drills, like the roll-in variations that we can do, or the rockers, or isolated rotations, or even field work. I think there's a lot more that we can do to apply better awareness of separation. So in that case, Alden, no, I don't think it's a separation drill. But yes, I think the glove side, the arm side, I would just focus on one or the other and stay there. So good question. And I wrote a pretty long dissertation back saying pretty much the similar thing. So check it out on Coop if you haven't already. It's dropped in there. So we've got Hayden dropping us a question in the chat here. Should we track our arm path with modus pulse for our perceived effort versus our top arm speed? So good question here. I will explain this piece from a technical side of things, and try to I'll get into the weeds a little bit here. Josh has also asked a question: what are some examples of expression of strength exercise and building of strength exercises, and what is the difference? Garrett, why don't you answer that real quick? And then I'll jump back on Hayden's. I'll go ahead and explain that one as well.
So 2 categories: expression of strength, building of strength. Expression of strengths are, for us at KineticPro, is our deadlift variation, our squats, and a bench press. If you guys ever get to that stage. All of expression of strength exercises are expressing the strength that we have. You're not going to be able to spend a lot of your time and energy on those lifts because they're very taxing on the body, which is then going to make you recover longer. If we're throwing as well, we don't want to be in a fatigue state from lifting that will affect your throwing and not being able to do the skill of your sport.
Sure.
So it's more of a like assessment piece than it is a training piece, and that's where the building of strength exercises come into play. We break down the squat, the deadlift, the bench press into smaller movements. So let's take the squat, for example. A front foot elevated split squat is going to mimic the ankle, knee, hip, torso of a squat, but because it's going to be lesser load because you're on one leg, you're going to be able to do more sets, more reps, more tempo. It's also going to add the benefit of being on a single leg to gain overall hip function. And with that, because it's lower, recovery is a little bit less. We can do that more often, more exposure to that exercise, the better you get at the exercise. And then you work back through the week. Let's say on Monday you deadlift. You do the rest of the exercises throughout the week that are building your strength. We come back to that Monday. We assess to see if, is the program you're on right now, is that increasing the deadlift or our assessment of strength, expression of strength? And then if it is, keep doing the same thing. And every week we're assessing, is the program we're on getting us better at what we need? Without putting us in a fatigue state where we're doing a bunch of sets and reps with heavy loads, and now we're sacrificing the ability to throw a bullpen or learn the skill of throwing or pitching and being able to actually do that.
Yeah, great. That's awesome. Josh, hopefully that answers your question there. Hayden, jump back into yours real quick. Talk about the pulse sleeve and how you should be looking at perceived effort. So I've done a lot of work around this and trying to figure out how to help guys understand RPE. And so, you know, you tell a guy to throw 50%, you tell a guy to throw 70%, you're going to find that torque values are just up and down all over the place. Arm speed is up and down all over the place. Reality is, and I'll go through. There's been iterations in the last year or two, from a sleeve to a strap, from a sensor to app changes to all of these different things, and from tagging to no tagging. Back when I was working with Modus Direct, one of the really unique things that we got to look at was torque by distance. And I would say that distance does a good job of governing the effort level of guys. So if you're throwing and you're backing up, you're being consistent with the intensity as you're backing up. Typically, distance can be a great governor of perceived effort. So you look at your max effort, you kind of pick an angle, a trajectory of the ball itself, and as you play long toss, you can use that to govern. Now, with your question direct about arm speed, honestly, the sleeve and even the strap. I'll give you guys some context around the strap here. When you put the strap on, one of the big issues with the strap. So when you put the strap on, it encourages you to tighten the strap over the forearm. And what I mean by that is that when I pull, so if the sensor, if you see me in the screen, the sensor is where my finger is, which is over the medial elbow. This is where it's supposed to be. But when you pull the strap tight, the strap actually encourages that sensor to move up to the top of the forearm. Any movement toward the top of the forearm, and we're talking about little bits of movement here, it's going to cause a lower stress value. So the idea that you're putting the sensor on in the exact same spot every single day, is the sensor accurate? Absolutely. Should it be tracked? Is it accurate enough daily? I don't know what happened there. The idea that you put the sensor in the same spot daily, the idea that it is going to be maybe a little bit moved, in terms of its use on a daily basis, would mean that the stress value, or that the overall arm speed value is going to be up or down a little bit daily. So my point is, you don't want to put a lot of weight into the arm speed component, because that can cause some issues with trying to govern. If I'm at 70% intensity and the sensor is a little bit moved, or it's moving while I throw a little bit, or just today my arm slot's a little bit different. These things all play factor into your ability to create 100 RPMs up or down, or 50 RPMs up or down, and it's not consistent enough. So is it okay to govern it? If I was gonna tell you to govern off of something, it'd probably be the torque value. But is that the best way to approach it? Not really. There really isn't a perfect solution to that yet. And it's just because the technology itself is just not quite there. The technology itself is a workload management sensor. It is a IMU, so inertial measurement unit, and it is designed specifically to be a sensor that tracks workload period, and gives us a much better idea, not a perfect idea, but a much better idea than what pitch counts have, or anything else that we've put together, innings limits, et cetera, in the past. So I digress on that. I think you get my point to the question, which is, basically we're looking at trying to figure out RPE based, or just perceived effort in general. Like, it's not a perfect science. It's going to come down to a lot of feel, period. So moving on to our next question, Alex Ballard, dropping one in. Appreciate you dropping one in, Alex. How could I auto-regulate workload if there are certain days I throw more than the given workload for that day? Days where there are extra throws at practice, such as PFPs, pickoffs, bunt D, etc. Great question. One that we get a lot. So, Garrett, you and I have been talking about this kind of stuff for a while. With yeah, man, it's we laugh about coaches, and just day-to-day practice schedules and all of that, and I think sometimes workload is looked at as it's a limitation factor, like, oh, you can't do X, and It's not meant to be. It's meant to be an enabler, but tell us when we are able to actually do these things. So, how can you actually, you know, basically regulate your workload daily? Well, you know, if you know you have PFPs, if you know you get into trends with coaches, here's just some off the cuff advice here. If you know you have coaches who like to do PFPs and it's up on the board, maybe the bulletin board before the game starts or the start practice starts for that day, maybe you cut back on plyos a little bit and maybe do plyos at the end of your day, end of your training day that day. That could always be, you know, one way of looking at it. I look at plyos as the lowest hanging option for us to exactly. If you have to pull them back, you know, you just play catch, get yourself loose enough to handle things, and then jump into your plyos at the end of the day and get your more skill specific work or focuses in terms of queuing or drilling. Do that at the end of your practice, maybe when nobody's there. It looks like you're getting extra work in. Maybe get some brownie points from the coach for getting extra work in. Who knows? But I would say that's probably the best way to do it to manage the workload effectively. Let's say you're going way over that workload regardless. You know, the coach says, hey, instead of throwing a 10 pitch bullpen today, you're going to throw a 50 pitch bullpen. Chances are you're going to spike your workload. You know, not the end of the world. Remember, AC ratio is you know, if you're in the black or if you're in the red, it's not like a death sentence here. I mean, it's something that is important for us to understand and know. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get hurt. It gives us an indication that we need to be more careful. So I think those days, especially focusing on sleep and focusing on nutrition and focusing on getting your body set back right, we just have a red flag, and it's important for us to note that we need to get our body reset. So, anything you want to say to recovery there?
From a recovery standpoint, yeah, just being able to get sleep and eating right, getting enough protein in, and being able to recover from those days and being able to relax and chill is going to be really important for that, just because it's going to help mitigate any type of fatigue that you're going to have in, and being able to just mitigate that and help that as much as possible.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think to close this out, obviously, you know, two things here. One, if you're looking at tracking and managing this, you know, getting if you guys are doing remote programming, you know, getting with Garrett on like nutrition tracking. You know, Garrett's not a dietitian; he's not going to give you meals, but it's and Garrett's meals himself are questionable at times. But the idea of at least tracking and knowing that you're getting adequate, like you said, adequate protein, like that's a huge deal, right? Making sure that we're taking care of our body. You know, if you guys like Garrett and I both have the same Polar Vantage M2, we track sleep with it. We both joke about how bad Garrett's sleep is every day, and how good mine is. But we talk about that kind of stuff, and if you guys have those kind of things, those are great leverage points, great tools. Exactly right. Don't get the whoop strap, but don't get me started on that. But the point is that's a great place to start for you guys, right? A great way to look at this. And then meeting with me as well, or emailing support in a week that you maybe don't have a check-in. You know, emailing support and saying, hey, I'm going way over, like what can I do? Realize this, that I use a calculator for your guys' workload. um, Especially you guys that are, you know, way over. I'll jump on and actually outline, you know, what you did for the last 28 days, and then actually project out into the future with the AC ratio, kind of what we should do to maybe get you back down. So I make recommendations off of that. Just email support, like I said, get you guys a new report out that week to help you kind of realign things and get back on schedule. So Alex, hope that answers your question, and you know, maybe gives you some insights as to how to value your time in that position. I know it's a tough position. So lastly, Hayden coming back in here, piggybacking off my first question, what about using a radar gun for perceived effort? I would honestly say that's probably the best one that I've seen of them. You know, velocity is a good governor, and it's still not perfect. You know, I think there's more. I think torque is maybe one of my favorites for it, just because it takes into account arm slot, arm speed, body type. You know, velocity can maybe be deceiving at times. But all of you guys know what your peak velocities are if I asked you off the top of your head. So I think it's pretty easy for us to oftentimes use velocity as the best governor universally. So if I had to say, you know, working off the first question, if I had to say pick something to work off of, you know, a radar gun is probably one of my, favorites or some issues with it when it gets uphill a little bit for long toss. But from a flat perspective and from a more straight on throw, radar gun's probably the best way to go. So with that being said, we will wrap it up tonight there. Great questions. Appreciate you guys jumping into the chat. And some of you guys online that we didn't get to, we will follow up with. And also some of you guys that are going to be on Coop dropping questions into the comment boxes or commenting. We definitely will continue to update you guys and respond back to your questions. So as Garrett becomes an iMovie expert and drops some amazing film on exercise, cueing and coaching, we'll be updating you guys with that as well. So keep an eye out for that in the next coming weeks here. But looking forward to continuing to move forward. We will be sending out emails, follow up this week. Make sure you guys have everything. If you guys have any questions about utilizing getting access to Coop, or if you have questions about understanding something we talked about tonight, or just questions about your training in general, as always, support@KineticProBaseball.com. That's going to ping the team. We will be in response to you guys quickly, working through and making sure that we get you guys great information back. That's it for tonight. So I'm going to send Garrett home to have 2 pounds of steak and enjoy his whatever kind of cooking he's been doing. I don't know what he's. Yeah, it's the other night we zoomed and he had Sour Patch Kids at about 9:30 or 10 at night.
300% daily activity.
So mad scientist in his habitat. All right, guys, appreciate the time. This will be saved, stored, recorded on Coop. Check it out if you guys would like to see a replay and see our wonderful discussion once again. But next week we'll be getting back Coop episode number 2 coming at you. Appreciate it, guys.